because the whole vampire story is based on reality. You know, you look at Dracula. He's Count Dracula. He's an aristocratic bloodline. He drinks blood. He only goes out at night, and some of these entities have a real problem with the Earth atmosphere, particularly sunlight. So all these things that are apparent stories and made up stories, they're based on fact. So much of it is. In fact, it's actually come out. In fact, Savile said it himself. This is how close Savile was to the royal family, Alex. He was brought in as an intermediary to try to find some agreement between Diana and Charles before their marriage broke up. The guy's a disc jockey. What's going on? You know, you don't get into that level of the royal family unless you're into what they're into. That Savile said in his own words that the man that brought him into the royal family was Lord Louis Mountbatten, who, you know, I mean, we're talking paedophilia again. And so it all kind of fits. And you know, that guy Thomas Hamilton, who shot all the children at the Dunblane School in Scotland.
Yeah, that was a big pedo scandal. He
was a pedophile, and he was another procurer of children for the rich and famous. This is why when they had the government cover-up, widely called an inquiry into Dunblane, that the person running it insisted that certain documents relating to the case were put sealed away for 100 years. And he said, oh, it's to protect the children. No, it's not. It's to protect the establishment, mate. I cannot, after nearly 25 years of this, I cannot express to people and stress to people more powerfully that Satanism, pedophilia is absolutely two of the, they're interconnected anyway, different expressions of the same thing in so many ways. They are in so many ways the cement, along with some other things, that hold the whole deal together. You just mentioned Prince Charles and Vlad Dracul and the family from whom Bram Stoker, and it was all related to reptilian imagery, and they were members of an elite order going back to ancient Egypt, probably further, called the Order of the Dragon, its short name anyway. And this is a point I made earlier, if you remember, about I talked about entities possessing these pedophiles, and I also mentioned about the fact that in many cases it was genetic as well. The attraction, the desire for sex with children was genetic. Well, it is, because you see, these particular hybrid bloodlines have a different information field to the rest of the population. They're not the same. And thus, it is absolutely in line with what I've been saying all these years, that the British royal family should be genetically related to the Dracos in Romania. I mean, you know, this is where it is. I mean, Mary of Teck, the grandmother of the present queen, was directly related to the sister, one of the Dracul sisters. When people realize who the British royal family really are, who the Bush family really are, who the Rockefellers really are, who the Rothschilds really are, and all these people, they are going to be beyond shocked. But going on for the Savile story, the procurer of children part of his whole deal is very, very important, because around the media and people in general in Britain at the moment, they're saying, how come there were people reporting him to the police and nothing was done? How come that he worked at the BBC all those years, and people in management who were given rumours about him and what have you, and what he was doing on BBC premises, by the way, some of it, but he was left alone. It's because as he said in various newspaper interviews and television interviews over the years, I'm untouchable. I can do anything I want. Nothing can stop me doing what I want. Why? Because these procurers of children, they go two ways. One, they procure children and they're safe. They're not going to talk out and reveal what's going on. They are left alone. The others, who they appear at some point to these people not to be safe, maybe this guy might blab, well, they disappear and they're no longer with us. But the Savills know how to play the game. And he said in an interview with Esquire magazine, he was talking about the royal family, and why he was so close to the royal family. And he said, the thing is, I get things done and I work deep cover. I've known the royal family for 1,000,000 years, he said. So once you've got these rings and you've got the procurer, then his back is the back of the rich and famous. So they put these people into the judiciary, into law enforcement, into media ownership, into banking, into government, and therefore everyone watches everyone's backs. And that's why Savile got away with it so long, not because he was just a pedophile, but because he was procuring people for children for these rich and famous people who were watching his back for him. And I mentioned another guy, Alex, in a book called The Biggest Secret. The first edition came out in 1998. And his name was Edward Heath. He was Prime Minister of Britain from 1970 to 74. And I named him in that book as a Satanist, a child killer, and a pedophile. But I named him 7 years before he dies. The connections are now starting to be made between Jimmy Savile and Edward Heath, because of Savile providing children for Edward Heath. And there's another connection, which is this children's home in the Channel Islands on Jersey, which is only 9 miles by 5, which came out a few years ago, and some genuine policemen were on the case, and they got kicked off because they were getting too close to the big names involved. Same with the genuine policeman that started off investigating the Mark Dutroux child murder and paedophile case in Belgium that was getting too close. They got rid of him as well. And this is the way it goes. You see, first of all, you've got these bloodlines that are addicted to sex with children for the reasons I've talked about. They then need procurers of children to provide an endless line of children for them, and the procurers need children. And this is why these networks invariably are always seeking and often succeed in hijacking and taking over children's homes all over the country and all over the world. Of course, the Boys Town in Nebraska is a classic example of a place where so much of this stuff has been reported to go on. Well, people like John W. DeCamp. But the situation in Jersey at the children's home, we had Heath and people like Louis Lord Mountbatten connected by some researchers to a scandal at a boys' home called Kincora in Belfast. We had the same in a series of North Wales children's homes. But what happens is when it comes out, they put the safe people in to, quote, investigate it. And of course, they might get a few of the small fry, but never the big people. And where this, Alex, then comes in to the bigger picture of the political direction of the world is this, and he's a wonderful example. Here you have a Satanist, a pedophile, and a serial, and I mean serial child killer, and he was the man, more than anyone else, through his political career, which goes way back into the 50s, 60s, who orchestrated Britain's entry into what is now the European Union. It was him as Prime Minister in 1972-73 that signed Britain into this now fascist organization, the European Union. Because, you see, he may have well done it because he was one of them and agreed with it. That may well have been the case with Heath. But once you've got these people, these pedophiles, in positions of power, and you in the shadows know that because you're involved with it, well, Mr. Heath or Mr. whoever, this is going to be your policy on foreign affairs. This is going to be your policy on finance, etc., etc. Oh, you don't fancy that? Oh, well, I've got a list of those children. This is how it works. Blackmail as a result of all this, which brings about this new world order by people pushing it on through political legislation because of the consequences of not pushing it on for them, is massively important in the way that this whole thing is orchestrated globally.
But as of April 2009, because of a change in legislation being introduced by Jack Straw, the Justice Secretary, the media will no longer be able to identify those involved in cases such as the Websters. Now, the Webster case is a child court case, family court case. And then this absolutely blatant statement, so it continues, it will also be illegal for any children currently in care to speak out, even if they feel they're being mistreated.
I know, it sends a shiver up your spine.
Well,
that's Jack Straw, people.
What human being would want
Tony
to
Blair's
make it...
friend.
What human being would want to make it more difficult for young people to speak out if they're being... Surely the legislation should be to make it easier for them to speak out, isn't it?
What this man done is abnormal to decent human beings.
Yeah.
He should never have been allowed. Also, I think his son was caught dealing drugs as well. And his brother William was on the sex offenders register for, assaulting. One was a violent attack on 2 girls, his brother William.
Right.
Now, this man should never have been given a job because he had a vested interest.
About this story in Britain relating to a man called Jimmy Savile. For people around the world who will not have come across him, Jimmy Savile was said to be a national treasure in Britain. He was one of the first people in the late 50s, very much more into the 60s, who became one of this new genre in entertainment called a disc jockey. And he, in the swinging 60s in Britain, he was play the records, he would be on the television and the radio and all the rest of it. And then he became well known for working for charities and running marathons for charity and working as a porter voluntarily in hospitals and raising money for other hospitals. And then he died in 2011, given a hero's kind of funeral and all the rest of it. And then a few weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, pretty much out of the blue, really, independent television in Britain produced a documentary in which they talked to a series of women who had been sexually abused by Savile when they were underage years ago. And what this did was trigger a massive number of other people to come forward, because at last they thought, oh, someone's going to believe me now at last. And they've come forward, and the police have said they've got something like 340 leads on this whole affair the last time I saw it. Well, I can tell them this, because I knew about Savile back in the late 1990s. They can double a number, triple it, multiply it by whatever they like before they've got anywhere near the number of victims of this guy. How I came across it was in the late 1990s, I went to a meeting of a few people at the House of Lords in London, the Houses of Parliament. A bit strange to be invited there. Anyway, we were in this little room. And there was 2 or 3 members of the House of Lords there and 1 or 2 other people. And I thought, what am I doing here? Anyway, people started discussing things. And there was a lady there that kept saying some very interesting things about Princess Diana. This is not long after she was killed in Paris. We're talking probably late 1997, maybe into 98. And at the end of this little meeting, I said to this lady, that's very interesting what you're saying about Diana. How do you know that? And she told me that she had a friend who had been a close friend, and he acknowledged as such, I found out later in the media, as a close friend for 9 years before they fell out. And this lady at the House of Lords, who was not connected to the House of Lords, she was just a person that was there for that meeting. She said, I think she'll talk to you. So a few weeks later, she arrives, both of them arrive on this island where I live, and I talked to this lady that she brought to see me at length, got it all down on tape, and talked to her again at another point. And what she was telling me was the horrors that Diana went through when she was pulled into the royal family for no other reason than genetics, to produce the heir in because the reason that these royal and aristocratic and major dark suit bloodlines are obsessed with genetics is because they're trying to hold, by interbreeding with each other, this hybrid genetic structure of these hybrids that are representing these entities with invisible light. If they start breeding outside of this hybrid network, then that hybrid nature is diluted very quickly. This is where interbreeding between royal families and interbreeding between banking families and all that stuff actually comes from, the blue bloods. And anyway, they wanted the Spencer genes from Diana and the Windsor genes to come together for various reasons, which they've got with this guy, Prince William. Anyway, she told me about all this, and then she started telling me about the paedophilia that went on, and Lord Mountbatten's connection to many things. This guy that was killed apparently by the IRA in his boat. I would fundamentally dispute that for my own information. But anyway, this whole cesspit that we call the British royal family was revealed before me in detail. And then, out of nowhere, this is about 98, she mentions this guy, Jimmy Savile, who was just a kind of disc jockey, and how close he was to the royal family, how Diana couldn't stand it, and how he was so close to them. And, you know, the obvious question was, why are the royal family close to this bloke? And then I was told not only about Savile and paedophilia, I was told about his necrophilia, his addiction to sex with dead bodies. And this suddenly, whoa, here we go. Why does this guy volunteer as a porter in hospitals? Well, they have mortuaries, that's why. And it's now, as a result of this television program, it's coming out that Savile actually was into his charities to get access to children. Well, it's something else. He was in the hospitals to get access to dead people. And these people, these bloodlines are beyond anyone's normal imagination of sick, I can't tell you. Think of sick and treble it, and you might just have started on the road, but you know when. But it's basically being held at the level that here was a stunningly widespread paedophile over decades and all over the country. And it's being kept to overwhelmingly to the fact he's a famous paedophile that's been exposed. The bigger story behind that is not being focused on, although I'm doing my best to get it out there. And that is that he was a procurer of children for rich and famous people, or has been, even those been following the whole conspiracy thing for a long time. When we appreciate this situation that we've been talking about, then we can appreciate the two things. One, that these are the mentalities that are put in positions of power in the agencies, be it the EPA, the Agriculture Department, Food and Drug Administration, in the TSA, and all these agencies of government and government itself, and in the military, and in all these institutions of control. These are the mentalities that are put there. And now when you see what they actually get up to outside of the public eye, even within a secret society, only a tiny few at the core of the core know the real story. And the real story is that these entities exist and that they are the force behind the scenes that is manipulating human affairs. You get to the real the bigger, more exclusive secret societies, you get to people like the Jesuits and Opus Dei and the Knights Templar and what I call Rothschild Zionism, which at its core is a secret society controlled by the Rothschilds. All the rest is detail and cover. And you will have a lot more understanding, and at the core, total understanding of what the real force behind this is. So the secret societies are to keep compartmentalize from the public the real story. So then we come to Satanism. Well, what is Satanism? Satanism is worship of these entities. You know, and it's when they do human sacrifices, these entities outside of visible light, but connecting into on the electromagnetic field level, they are stealing and feeding off the energy of terror that that is released in these rituals. They are systematically done and built up and built up and built up. This is why today these people are doing the same rituals they did in Babylon and the ancient world, because there's a certain sequence that creates a certain outcome. And what they want in the victim is absolute terror. And the entities are feeding off that energy on an electromagnetic level as it comes, as it's generated by the terror. And also, that terror puts an adrenaline, a particular adrenaline in the blood, and that's what the Satanists within visible light, within the ritual, actually are drinking. And this connects us into pedophilia. The energy, these entities are feeding off human energy. When Morpheus in the Matrix symbolically held up the battery and said that the machines have turned humans into one of these, that was a profound truth in terms of what's really happening. They feed off our energy. Now, everything has a frequency. And if you have a frequency yourself, a frequency range, you can only absorb energy in that frequency range. Otherwise, it passes through you. Never the twain shall meet, just like radio stations can share the same space but not interfere with each other. And their frequency range resonates to the same frequency range as what I call low vibrational human emotion: fear, anxiety, hatred, terror. All these things are within that frequency range. So the more that humans can be manipulated to generate fear, anxiety, my goodness me, how many excuses are we given for it, the more energy they are absorbing. But this brings us round to pedophilia, which also connects into the same thing. Because the energy these entities want more than anything else is the energy of children before puberty. You know, we see puberty as a hormonal change, and in this visible light holographic realm, it is. But actually, the hormonal change is just a visible light level expression of a vibrational information change going on at the deeper energetic levels of the child. And they want the child's energy before that change takes place. It's a particular purity to them. And thus, when we look back into history and we see this common theme of sacrificing young virgins to the gods, young virgins was simply code for children, and the gods was code for these entities operating outside of visible light and our ability to see them, though they can enter briefly, and that's when some people have some strange experiences. And so what's happening is that the pedophiles are possessed people. They're possessed at the electromagnetic level, and what is stimulated within them, and in some of these bloodlines is absolutely genetic as well, is an obsession and an addiction to sex with children. Why? Because when the person is having sex with the child, the entity, the possessing entity, is using the pedophile as merely a conduit to draw off that child's energy, to draw off that child's life force. And therefore, wherever you find the possessed bloodlines of these hybrid bloodline networks that are representatives of these entities with invisible light, you will find pedophiles galore, you will find Satanists galore, and you will find initiates of secret societies galore, normally all three, certainly with the top ones. And this is where it comes from. This is why it is, why the ratio of Satanists to the so-called upper levels of society and power is vastly greater than it is in the general population. And therefore, wherever I have researched, anywhere in the world, people in real positions of power, I have found them almost always, without almost exception, to be members of very significant secret societies, to be great numbers of them pedophiles, and great numbers of them to be Satanists. And, you know, these people that run Satanism, they're not guys from the street. There was a guy called David Berkowitz, the son of Sam Killer in New York, who, when he went to jail for it, started a series of correspondence with a Christian minister, in which he held his hand up and said, yes, I did it, but I was a front for a satanic coven cult. And he said in one of his letters, Satanists are peculiar people. They aren't ignorant peasants or semi-literate natives. Rather, their ranks are filled with doctors, lawyers, businessmen, and basically highly responsible citizens. They are not a careless group or are apt to make mistakes, but they are secretive and bonded together by a common need and desire to mete out havoc on society. It was Aleister Crowley who said, I want blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad. What comes from blasphemy, murder, rape, revolution, anything bad? Low vibrational human energy, which these entities can feed off. This is why society has been structured to generate that energy all the time. A war, imagine a war. And the energy, the low vibrational energy that is generated from pepper bombing a city of civilians or a world war. And there was a Swiss banker who last year told a Russian magazine, a magazine called Noviden, he was talking about Satanists in banking. And he said, these people are corrupt, sick in their minds, so sick they are full of vices, and those vices are kept under wraps on their orders. Many are into Satanism. When you go to some banks, you see these satanistic symbols, like in the Rothschild Bank in Zurich. These people are controlled by blackmail because of the weaknesses they have. They have to follow orders, or they will be exposed, they will be destroyed, even killed. So if we take... and so much more comes from this, which I'll go into in Wembley to explain the world that we're living in and why they do what they do. But
if somebody was to hit you with a broken bottle, you'd think they were a maniac. Yet a lot of you risk far worse.
You must give them all fair warning.
Animals?
No. Victims.
Victims?
Yes. Hope springs eternal in the breast of a single man.
I see. I understand. Very good. And it's good to have a cigar here.
But the most prominent paedophile associated with the Savile Ring was a man called Edward Heath, who you may recall was Prime Minister and took us into the EEC. Heath was into little boys, and Savile was supplying them. A number of these boys were taken out of the Haute de Garenne home in Jersey. Savile was taking children from a children's home with the support of German assets in Jersey. What was happening was that children's homes in the Channel Islands, particularly Haute de Garenne in Jersey, children were being taken from these homes, boys, in the case of Edward Heath, as he was gay, and a paedophile, were being taken onto his yacht, the Morning Cloud. Savile was actually going out he went down to Jersey, and he was actually taking boys. There was another man involved as well, but Savile himself took boys from the children's home, where he was a guest, or welcome, onto the boat. So he was taking boys out onto Morning Cloud. Now, since Heath was well known, and since the boys were talking young men, the boys were murdered and thrown off the boat. That's why the BBC and the Cabinet Office have been so keen to protect Savile. That's why the Cabinet Office in the 1980s were willing to back Savile to the point of giving him a position of authority at Broadmoor, which is an absolute, you don't put a paedophile in charge of Broadmoor. The Cabinet Secretary at the time, who thankfully is no longer with us, Hunt, was also a paedophile, was in on this, met Savile, he was Catholic, met Savile, as did that very nice man, the late Archbishop of Westminster, Cardinal Basil Hume. Basil was not a paedophile, but knew Hunt and had a shrewd idea. He wasn't stupid, he had a shrewd idea of what had been going on, and I've no doubt was told to keep a lid on it. Hunt was in on it, so the Cabinet Secretary at the time was in on it, was aware of what was going on, was aware he had a Prime Minister who was involved not just in abusing young boys, but was murdering them as well. It's quite possible that there was a crewman on the yacht who did the actual murder. I'm not saying Ebert Heath necessarily bashed the boys on the boko and tossed them overboard. He may have had somebody do that for him, but he was certainly guilty of murder under English law as an accessory or on the joint enterprise basis. Oh, if someone is inclined in that direction and you can supply them with boys, then you've got a hold on them, or girls. There's nothing worse for a politician than being exposed in the murder and sexual abuse of young people. And if you've got a politician who is abusing and killing young girls and boys, but boys or girls, then you've got a hold on them.
I've now got 2 teenage children, so I make them sit down, get the best looking one.
I'll give them an angle that they've never maybe had before. It's not an easy gaff to penetrate.
That was the biggest thing that ever happened in their lives at the time, that's for sure.
I did with a young lady at Buckingham Palace. She's in the back of the car, hanging on to me like a lifebelt. I think she might remember it.
When all their various fathers, brothers, boyfriends, husbands come looking for me with a sawn-off shotgun, I got away with it.
Mr. Harper, thank you again for agreeing to an interview. It's about Jimmy Savile and his visits to Jersey. Is there anything new you can tell us about his visits to Jersey and his alleged abuse over here? That hasn't been said already.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I knew very little about his specific activities in Jersey. I don't think there's any doubt that Jimmy Savile was a savage sexual predator and his victims were young, vulnerable children. I don't think there's any doubt about that now, and from the evidence that's emerging, he was obviously active in Jersey. And we all had our suspicions about that, and we had some knowledge of him during the inquiry in 2008, but not enough to even go and question him. But as far as he's concerned, no, I've nothing new that I can add. I suppose the only thing I would add is that the spotlight is now shining on his activities in Jersey. In the UK, that spotlight has moved also to those who were encouraging him, who were covering up for him, and who knew about his activities. And I think that sooner or later, and hopefully sooner, that the same spotlight will shine on those in Jersey who obviously were encouraging him and protecting him there as well.
That's the sort of angle we've been looking at. Is Jimmy Savile's dead, and you've said it before, he's no longer a harm to children. Shouldn't the questions be asked, you as a policeman, I suppose, would say, who invited him to Jersey? Who was contacting Jersey? Why was he invited to Jersey? Who invited him to Hope de la Garenne? Why is this the place, do you think, we should be looking at now?
Yes, undoubtedly. I mean, he all accounts went back and forward to Jersey fairly regularly, and if you listen to some of the accounts, he was feted as a VIP, and that doesn't surprise me, because he did have connections to royalty, and as I've said somewhere else, you just look at the Jersey authorities, they tend to fawn over anybody with connections to royalty, and they seem to like that sort of thing. So Jimmy Savile would have been seen very much as a VIP. I'm told that he was even Mr. Battle of the Flowers on 1 or 2 occasions. So I think, yes, I mean, he obviously kept getting invites over to Jersey, and he obviously kept getting these official invitations, and invitations to places like Hope de la Garenne. And I think that it's inconceivable that people in authority at these homes and these institutions did not know what he was doing. I just find that impossible to believe.
Same as most of us, we think this is where the investigation should be going now. Let's hope it does. Which brings us on to yesterday on State Radio. You said the Savile inquiry would have to be dealt with by an outside or independent police force, not the state of Jersey police. Now, some come away with the impression that this was an attack on the state of Jersey police. Was it?
No, and I'm not sure if the BBC actually emphasised what I'd said properly. In no way was it an attack on the States of Jersey Police. I have the highest regard for the States of Jersey Police. The vast majority of officers in the States of Jersey Police are professional, they're honest, they're as good as anywhere else that I've seen, and nothing that I've seen since I left has given me any cause to doubt that. Like any police force, it has one or two who they could be doing well to get rid of. But I have a very, very high regard. It's not the States of Jersey Police are the problem. It's, for instance, the current Home Affairs Minister and the rest of the government. The current Home Affairs Minister has made it clear he wants to take political control of the States of Jersey Police. From my own experience, I know how hard it was to do anything without the politicians, certain politicians, hammering on your door trying to set the agenda. Even for operational matters, they're trying to set the agenda. That's where the big problem lies. The States of Jersey Police have got a lot of expertise, but the government in Jersey are determined to wrest control of that. And no matter how effective and how strong you are, you're going to suffer from that. And they've got a huge vested interest. They've tried so hard to cover up the child abuse. They've tried so hard to discredit the victims. They've tried so hard to discredit those who are working on behalf of the victims. And there's a long, long list of those, aren't there? You know, you go right back to Simon Bellwood, Stuart Sibley, myself and Graham Power, and of course the latest, Trevor Pittman, who's under savage attack since he dared to even raise the possibility that they might have been up to shenanigans over the BDO inquiry. So it's not the States of Jersey Police are the problem, it's political masters who are trying to manoeuvre them at every turn.
The comment about the independent police force and everything seemed to make headline news yesterday. That's what they took out of your interview on the BBC radio, was the independent police force coming in. There are those of us who believe possibly the biggest revelation that you made yesterday was that there are suspects from your inquiry, remembering you're the senior investigating officer of this child abuse inquiry, that the biggest revelation was that there are still people employed in the care system that were suspect in your inquiry. Can you elaborate any on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of them, and obviously I can't name names or give any clues as to who they might be, but there was one in particular who Eileen Fairweather, I think, spoke about in her article in the Telegraph on Saturday, who caused absolute fear amongst victims when his name was mentioned. And I had very, very strong evidence against him, evidence that would have seen him prosecuted in the UK. I have got absolutely no doubt about that. But he wasn't prosecuted. The Attorney General at the time decided that the evidence didn't meet his criteria for similar fact evidence. Now, that man's still in a senior position today, despite the fact that I had that evidence. But leave aside the evidence, I also disclosed to the authorities in Jersey a heck of a lot more than evidence. I disclosed an awful lot of intelligence and the contents of a number of witness statements, I think in excess of a dozen, all of which accused this man of abuse.
So a dozen statements, from a dozen different people about this one particular person?
Yes. I disclosed that to the authorities in Jersey. Not all of it was strong enough to stand as evidence in its own right, but it was all intelligence, which is what disclosure is all about. You disclose material which you believe to be true and which is relevant and which is disclosed for the protection of children. That's why I disclosed it, to protect children. It seems very little action was taken because the man is still there and he's still working in a responsible position and he's still working in the child care system. So that, I think, is the spotlight that all of this needs to be falling on. And we go back again to those protecting, encouraging and covering up for the child abusers. The victims are the ones who are being targeted by the Jersey government, and the abusers are the ones who are being protected. Everybody can see that. Everybody can see that, but the Jersey government really don't give a damn. They are so sure of their own invincibility that anybody who dares to speak against them immediately gets their guns turned on them.
We just come back, if I ask Mike just to put Mr. Straw back up on the screen, because I'm just going to read that little last bit of that quote again. So Mr. Straw, he made it illegal for any children currently in care to speak out, even if they feel they're being maltreated. So against the background of what you're telling us about harrowing information about what's happening for children, this man is saying...
Sorry, where was that quote from?
Actually, it was from a newspaper, The Independent, yeah. But they wrote an article in which, they were quite outspoken in saying this is incredible.
It's like you say, that's what Jack Straw says. It would also be illegal for any children currently in care to speak out, even if they feel they are being maltreated.
Now, you have got audio of Mr. Straw being asked about this, haven't you?
I think the film footage speaks for itself, Brian.
Well, if Mike can manage, it's movie clip 3, I think.
Yesterday, I was in the cab. I picked up a film.
Was this a proper one?
A proper cab, yeah. I was in my cab working, and I had a guy in the cab, and he's a very independent. Bill Maloney's name. He makes little independent films and stuff. And I didn't realise he's working on one now about child abuse, and I didn't realise, he said to me to say to you, why in 2009 you made it illegal or for any children in care to speak out about being ill-treated. Did you do that, Jack?
No.
He said that was something to do with you, and I said, I've got you. He said, oh, Jack Straw, he made it illegal.
I grant this.
Children in care to speak out. I said, well, I'll ask him that tomorrow.
It gets involved in so much that occasionally you have memory lapse, but I think I remember that. So I don't remember. I mean, it's not. Amongst other things, it's not my area of responsibility. I mean, actually, I don't know where it's coming from, because one of the things I've been doing is to try and open up the family courts where a lot of these issues get argued about, and so that people, the press would not be able to report the names of the kids or therefore their parents, but they would be able to say, well, this is a really odd decision, and I've had, frankly, a very big fight with some of the people in the family courts and the children's organisations who want family justice, so-called, to remain a secret garden. So I can say to him that I don't know what he's talking about, but
Well, I think what we missed at the beginning of the clip was the explanation. What the audience don't realise is that guy, the black cab driver who Jack Straw blatantly lied to, was a friend of mine. And he was given the job because he does acting as well, and I trained him as an actor, the cab driver. And one day the Sun went to him because they was looking for someone who could pick up, I think it was the last election, they could pick up politicians and they'd talk in the cab, and then the Sun would put it up on their site, you know what I mean, and people could see it. So Jack Straw blatantly lied there. So that is what happened, and he didn't expect that, but you can see how easily the man lies. He is an outrageous liar, and I think that Jack Straw should be behind bars.
Well, okay, so we're saying to the audience today, just think about, we're not providing the absolute answer to this thing, but we're asking the question.
Well, we haven't got time.
Well, we can have another go, I hope.
Yeah.
We're going to say, what is this man trying to achieve by stopping children speaking out? Is the agenda from running secret family courts, and they are secret, there's no jury, there's no press. We've even got a mother who's had her 2 boys taken away from her, who is now not allowed to even mention the names of her 2 boys. She can only show them by holding up her wrists, because she's got the names of the 2 children on her wrists. So it seems if you apply common sense, which is a pretty reasonable thing to do, if you apply common sense, surely we must be saying that the only reason you would want to stop children speaking out if they claim or allege they're being abused is to cover up what's going on.
Is to cover up the evidence and not to put the perpetrators, the institutional perpetrators, into the dock where they should be. And these sentences, the tariff has got to go up.
But of course, we haven't got clean courts at the moment, because we also know.
I don't believe we've ever had a clean court.
Absolutely, but we've certainly got judges who have themselves been put in prison for being paedophiles or abuse or sexual abuse.
Not too many though.
Not too many. But if we have a look at another politician, and the lady concerned is Harriet Harman. Here she is. She's, of course, looking very clean and smart and upper middle class. Do you think? She's not quite upper class, I don't think.
Well, I don't know, Brian. I just think bitch.
Well, here is the woman. And if we dig back into her history, we find that when she was originally connected with the National Council for Civil Liberties, which is the forerunner of Liberty, the organisation, she was lobbying for the rules on pornographic photos of children to be relaxed. And if I show this in a bit more detail, here she is looking a little bit chubbier and younger, of course, and I'll just read what was going out. In NCCL's official response to the government's plans to reform sex laws, dubbed Lolita's Charter, it suggested reducing the age of consent and argued that childhood sexual experiences willingly engaged in with an adult result in no identifiable damage. It claimed that children can suffer more from having to retell their experiences in the court or the press. And then in an official NCCL response, which was signed by the then Miss Harman, that was a response to the Protection of Children Bill, it was claimed that the new law could lead to damaging and absurd prosecutions and increase censorship. She suggested that a pornographic photo or film of a child should not be considered indecent unless it could be shown that the subject had suffered, and that prosecutors would have to prove harm rather than defendants having to justify themselves. And at the time that this lady made this remarkable statement...
Evil statement, Brian, I think. I
totally agree with you.
That is evil.
Absolutely. And we've got, well, okay, the images come off there, but at that time, the National Council for Civil Liberties was directly linked into an organisation called PI, the Paedophile Information Exchange, and it was also linked into PAL, Paedophile Action for Liberty. So we just ask a question here. We've got one. They happen to be Labour MPs, but we'll talk about that in a minute. We've got one Labour MP who's quietly bringing in a law, so it's stopping children who are being abused speaking out. A classic example with that going on at the moment is Oxford and Cherwell Valley College, where none of the Oxfordshire Safeguarding Board have actually dealt with evidence of abuse within the college. So one man is denying children the opportunity of speaking out, and then here we've got a lady who is actually pushing to make it easier to take pornographic pictures of children.
Well, there you go. I mean, you know...
do they not think like ordinary people? What do you think is going on?
What we have to do is, first of all, when you look at young offenders institutions, it is Her Majesty's Young Offenders Institution.
Right.
Prisons, Her Majesty's Prison, HMP. Now, Lancaster Prison, for example, was built purely to give money to the Crown. We've got Prince Andrew messing about with one of the most prolific child traffickers, richest anyway, i.e. Jeffrey Epstein. We have to start looking at these people.
And asking the questions.
And asking the questions. Why is Prince William being groomed to be king? I mean, Prince William... I'll tell you what he has had, the Order of the Garter. And his job, he went straight into the city and he was interested in money.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. We have Charles, we have serious allegations against... I don't like calling them princes. I don't like princess.
Well, we're just going to play the game in this program.
Well, we're playing the game in this one. You know, the knighting of someone, Sir Jimmy Savile. I mean...
Why?
Yeah. Why? Kneel it. Well, I mean, this is a Christian society.
Well,
now, the Bible tells us you do not kneel or bow to anyone.
Or take an oath.
Or take an oath.
Yeah.
And then when we get this knighthood, you know, the Queen owns the island of Jersey.
Right, so we
don't own it, Brian. The UK doesn't own the island of Jersey.
Okay.
The Queen, the Crown, owns the island of Jersey. Let's get that straight.
Right.
And she has taken no responsibility. All she's got to say, this is outrageous. She said something about Hamza, the guy, is it Hamza? Hamza, who was just sent to America. She said, why is this evil man still here? Yeah? Why doesn't she say, why has all this evil stuff been going on the island that I own? She should be saying this to Phil. It's
a very good question.
What happened on our island, Phil? Don't you think we should speak up and say we don't know nothing about it, or we're going to get it sorted out?
Okay.
Nothing.
Absolutely, Bill. We've got 9 minutes, and there's a few things I think we ought to ram into the programme.
Yeah.
Just sticking on politicians and what it's about. Money you've mentioned. Now, a figure which I think you said to me last night was that to keep a child in one of these young offenders institutions, so it's being run by Serco, the biggest company you've never heard of, and I think you said £175,000 a year.
Right, well, that's Serco. But then you've got councils that have secure children's homes, £250,000. Per child up to £250,000 per child per year. You can go and foster a child, Brian, okay? On the backs of buses now. We were talking about it this morning. Got a spare bedroom? Are you over 25? Why not foster a child?
Yeah, so children...
Not, have you got children? Have you got a family? Could you accept a child into your family? Have you got a spare bedroom? Are you over 25, want to foster a child?
Yeah.
So they will get up to 500, it starts at about 400 and something pound a week per child, nearly £500 per week. A lot more if the kid's got learning disabilities or any kind of incapacities about it. A lot more.
Yeah.
So this is big profit. And that is why the kids have not been put out for adoption, because the money is in the fostering.
Yeah. Well, we know even with the legal fees around family courts, we're talking about a minimum of £20 billion a year.
Crazy.
And if we tot up the sort of figures that Bill is talking about here, and please go away and audience, please go away and check this stuff yourself. We're also talking about tens of billions of pounds around. Children are big money.
Yeah.
Now,
could I just say one thing quickly?
Yeah.
That people say to me, Bill, why do you think these people are killing the children? Why are they burying them? You know, Lenny Harper's investigation, Lenny Harper's investigation. You must see, please watch Sun, Sea and Satan. If you don't watch any more of our work, just watch Sun, Sea and Satan. They say to me, why do you think these people are killing these children, Bill? Because today's victims are tomorrow's witnesses. You've got to get your heads round this. Today's victims are tomorrow's witnesses. If you've got a good life, but you've killed a child, it's going to come back on you. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you don't actually kill them.
Right, let's get in our remaining little film clip if we can. And this is where you had the opportunity to speak to Harriet Harman. To ask her a few questions.
Harriet Harman and Ed Balls, or is it just
it's Ed Balls as well, and also the union man whose name escapes me.
Dave Prentice.
Right. So
Dave Prentice.
We've just about got time to get this clip in.
Okay. Harriet, right, if I can just give you 1 minute. We're talking about child abuse. We'd just like to talk to you about the cuts and how it's going to affect child abuse. Harriet, you don't want to talk about child abuse. I understand that, Harriet, but you're here to talk to people on the street, and we represent... So Harriet Harman doesn't want to talk to us about child abuse today.
She didn't say that.
Okay? At the moment, she doesn't. Well, that's what he said to me. I gave her a chance. Mind your own business. Let's go again. Let's go again. Let's go again. Chop, chop.
This way.
You've got to get the face. Get the face. Harriet. That's common assault. You'll get arrested for that.
I'm a woman.
I know
the women's right. Harriet, get on these. Harriet, I need to push you on this. Harriet, why won't you talk to us about child abuse, Harriet? You're part of the government. Don't touch me because don't you just touch me. Right, so Harriet, Harriet is not willing to talk about child abuse. And how are the cuts going to affect child abuse? How are the cuts going to affect child abuse, Harriet? Harriet, how are the cuts going to affect child abuse, Harriet?
I'm very sorry, she's talking to people who've come here from...
So Harriet's gone to the police officer here, and we do carry a press pass, and Harriet Harman does not today wish to talk to us about child abuse. Okay? Thank you very much. Thank you, officer. Right. That was Harriet Harman. She didn't want to talk to us about child abuse, and I think I know why. In 1978, when she became a solicitor, she urged the ministers to make it legal for people to be allowed to take sexually explicit images of children, and she wanted that to be made legal as long as the children in the images hadn't been harmed or abused. So that's Harriet Harman. Harriet Harman was in favour of making sexually explicit images of children, and she urged ministers to do that. So maybe that's why Harriet Harman didn't want to talk to us about child abuse. Thank you very much. It's Bill Maloney, and I represent a film company called Primass Films, and we're interested in what the cuts are going to do against child abuse and young offenders institutions.
Hey, mate, I think it's very important we make...
I'll talk to Ed, not you. You're here to talk to people.
I'm just on the BBC.
Ed, I represent the lower working classes, and I'd like to know what you're going to do, and what your government... Let that girl alone. I want to know what you're going to do to help child abuse. And you've been talked about this before. What are you going to do about child abuse in our young offenders institutes? Bill, yeah, so you don't want to talk about it. Well, talk to me about it. Let go. What are you going to do about institutional child abuse operating in this?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, so they don't want to talk about this subject.
No,
they don't want to talk at all.
No, they don't.
Right, we've got a couple of minutes, just a couple of quick slides to put up. This one turns me cold. We now know what's been going on in the BBC, and this is the BBC a few years ago, where the BBC were advertising children for adoption. They had a magazine called Families Wanted. I have a copy of that magazine. You open it, children being advertised like puppies or iPods.
Yeah.
Where are these children? Where have they come from? Have they been willingly given up? So that's one. The second one is that we know that the BBC is highly selective. It doesn't want to get involved with the Holly Gregg case. Down syndrome girl abused. The BBC doesn't want to get involved.
Once again, institutions.
Right, and here is Kevin Annett, a pastor who's been warning about the abuse of children in Canada, but with links back to Britain. He's now been banned from Britain.
And links to the Crown as well. Our Queen and Prince Philip going out to Canada and taking 10 children from the smart class of a school, and those kids never been seen again.
Är han naken? Gud, det ser ut som att de kommer från en helt annan tid, eller hur? Precis. Ja. Du, kolla. Är han naken? Så. Det händer inte. Filmar du det här eller? Han är naken.
Heading to church on Christmas Day, Prince Andrew with other royals. Any festive cheer has been replaced for him by concerns over these allegations, which he denies. Also accused and also protesting his innocence, the American lawyer Alan Dershowitz. Tonight he's preparing to take legal action against his accuser, and he told the BBC the Prince should follow suit.
My goal is to bring charges against the client and require her to speak in court. If she believes she has been hurt by me and by Prince Andrew, she should be suing us for damages. I welcome that lawsuit. I welcome any opportunity which would put her under oath and require her to state under oath these false allegations.
This man is the reason Prince Andrew's facing talk of lawsuits. It's his once close friend, the American financier Jeffrey Epstein, a registered sex offender. Andrew stayed with him and they've holidayed together. The well-connected billionaire was sentenced in 2008 to 18 months in jail after pleading guilty to an offence of soliciting a minor for prostitution. 14 years ago, Prince Andrew was photographed with Virginia Roberts, who was then 17 and who was described as Epstein's personal masseuse. Now the Prince has been named in court papers. It's not an action against him. An unnamed woman alleges that when she was a minor, she was the victim of a sex trafficking scheme run by Epstein. The document reads, "One such powerful individual Epstein forced the woman to have sexual relationships with was a member of the British royal family, Prince Andrew." She maintains it happened once here on Epstein's private island in the Caribbean at an orgy with numerous underage girls, and also in London and New York. Officials here at the palace insist these allegations are categorically untrue, but they know that's not the end of it. Prince Andrew took a big knock in 2011 when his links with Epstein were first scrutinised closely. 4 years on, he continues to pay a price for that friendship. Peter Hunt, BBC News, Buckingham Palace.
Är han naken? Gud, det ser ut som att de kommer från en helt annan tid, eller hur? Precis. Ja. Du kollar. Är han naken?